The morning Malam Gaba called Hawa into his study and told her to sit down was the same morning she had been planning to tell him she had been accepted into the nursing program in Kaduna. She never got to say it. He spoke for a long time about deaths and family honor and difficult times, and a good man named Alhaji Suleiman who had agreed to be very understanding about the whole arrangement. Hawa sat in that wooden chair and listened to her father explain how he had traded her future for the cancellation of a textile debt that had nothing to do with her. She was 20 years old. She did not cry in front of him. She waited until she was back in her room. Then she sat on the edge of her bed and let herself feel every single thing for exactly 1 hour. Then she stood up, washed her face, and began to pack. She had decided something in that hour that she would carry quietly for the rest of her life. Whatever happened next, she would not let what her father did turn her into someone she did not recognize. Alhaji Suleiman was 61 years old, and Hawa had prepared herself for the worst. She arrived at his large compound in Kano on a Thursday evening with 2 bags and the kind of stillness that comes from a person who has already grieved everything they are losing. What she found surprised her. The compound was neat and calm and full of books. Alhaji Suleiman himself met her at the entrance and told his housekeeper to show her to her room and make sure she had eaten. He did not look at her the way she had feared. He looked at her the way you look at someone who has gone through something unfair and you are not sure yet how to address it. He gave her 2 weeks to settle. He asked her nothing and demanded nothing. On the 15th day, he knocked on her door and asked if she would like to see the warehouse. That was how it began. Alhaji Suleiman had built his textile business over 30 years, importing fabrics from Turkey, India and Dubai, and distributing across the north and into Niger and Chad. He knew every thread count, every supplier, every seasonal trend, and he was lonely in a way that large successful men sometimes become, surrounded by people who wanted things from him, and no one who simply sat with him. Hawa listened. That was the thing about her that he noticed first. She did not just hear, she actually listened, asked questions, remembered details, connected information in ways that took his younger staff years to learn. Within 6 months, she was sitting in on supplier calls. Within a year, she was managing his Kano showroom with a confidence that made customers assume she had been doing it for a decade. "You have a gift," he told her one evening over dinner. "Whatever your father thought he was doing, he put you somewhere that is going to reveal who you actually are." She looked at him for a long time before she answered. "I decided the day I came here that I would not waste the life God still gave me just because someone else tried to decide what it was worth." Alhaji Suleiman looked at his plate. Then he quietly said, "I want to send you to university, part-time, here in Kano, whatever program you choose." She chose business administration. 2 years later, they traveled to Istanbul together for the first time for a fabric sourcing trip. Hawa stood in a warehouse full of the most beautiful silks and brocades she had ever seen and negotiated prices in broken English and hand gestures that made the Turkish suppliers laugh and then agree. Alhaji Suleiman watched her work, and on the flight home, he told her he wanted to put a portion of the business in her name. "You have earned it," he said simply, "and I want to make sure that whatever happens to me, you are never at the mercy of anyone's decision about your worth again." She understood what he was telling her. She held his hand for the rest of that flight, and they did not need to say anything else. Alhaji Suleiman died on a quiet Tuesday morning 14 months later. His heart had been weakening for 2 years, and he had known it longer than he told anyone. The doctor said it was peaceful. His housekeeper said he had been smiling at something on the ceiling for the last hour before he went. Hawa was 23 years old and a widow. She buried him with full honors, received the condolences of suppliers and partners and government officials who flew in from Lagos and Abuja and beyond. And then she sat alone in his study, surrounded by his books, and allowed herself to grieve, a man who had seen her when her own father had looked straight through her. Then she stood up and went to work. The business did not slow down. If anything, it grew because Hawa understood it completely now, had relationships with every supplier, knew every customer by name, and brought an energy to the showrooms that made people want to come back. She opened a second location in Abuja, then a third in Lagos. She registered the company fully in her name, hired a legal team, and quietly became one of the most respected textile distributors in northern Nigeria before her 26th birthday. People in Kano called her Lolo. She had not asked for the title. It simply became what people called a woman who carried herself the way she did, like someone who had been tested by fire and come out not hardened but refined. Back in her father's compound in Kano, the old neighborhood had begun to talk. Stories travel fast in those streets, and the story of Malam Gaba's daughter, the one he gave away for a debt, had become a story nobody could stop telling. Malam Gaba heard it the way a man hears things that both fill him with pride and hollow him out with something he cannot name. He told people she was his daughter. He said it proudly on the mosque on Fridays. He accepted the congratulations of neighbors who said you must have raised her well for her to turn out like that. He said nothing to correct them. But he thought about the wooden chair in his study. He thought about a 20-year-old girl who had not cried in front of him. He thought about it more than he admitted to anyone. His eldest son lost his job. His second son needed money for a medical procedure that the family could not afford. His third son had a business idea that required capital. And so Malam Gaba, 70 now and moving more slowly than before, dressed in his best grey kaftan and travelled to his daughter's address in Kano, the big house on the quiet street that people pointed to when they talked about her. He was shown into the sitting room. It was large and calm and decorated with the quiet confidence of someone who had built everything in it herself. Books on the shelves, real art on the walls, a window that looked out onto a garden that was green and alive and tended. Hawa came in 10 minutes later, white hijab, measured steps. She sat across from him and a housekeeper placed tea between them without being asked. He had prepared a speech on the journey there. He had rehearsed it. He had told himself it would go well. She looked at him and asked him how much he had sold her for. Quietly, without drama, just the question sitting in the air between them like something that had been waiting years for the right room. He tried to explain. She said his name once and asked the question again, and all his prepared words went somewhere he could not find them. The silence that followed was the loudest thing he had ever heard. She stood and told him to drink his tea and go home to the sons he had chosen, and she walked out of her own sitting room without looking back even once. He sat there for a long time. The tea went cold. The garden outside the window stayed green. Somewhere in the house he could hear her voice, calm and steady, speaking to someone on the phone about a shipment arriving from Istanbul on Friday. Malam Gaba stood eventually, straightened his kaftan, and walked himself to the gate. The guard opened it without needing to be told. And as he stepped out into the afternoon sun of a city his daughter had quietly conquered, he finally understood something that no man should need to learn this late. That the child you treat like a transaction will become the testimony you cannot claim, and the gate you find closed is the one you left open when it mattered most. What God places inside a person cannot be cancelled by what a person does to them. The ones who survive what should have broken them always become the ones nobody can ignore. If this story moved you, drop a comment below and tell me what you felt. Would you have given him the tea or shown him the gate? Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Like and subscribe to Joy's Folktales. New stories dropping every week, and trust me, you absolutely do not want to miss what is coming next.